Welcome to NTD News. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Here are today's top stories. An attack on a naval base in Pensacola, Florida today shook local military and civilian personnel. The shooter took 3 lives and wounded several others before being killed by first responders. The U.S. added 266,000 jobs in November. Unemployment numbers returned to a 50-year low. Key industries play a big role. Oil prices rose today after some of the world's major oil exporting nations met and decided to cut their oil production. It's set to go into effect early next year. Movie producer and accused sex offender Harvey Weinstein is in court again. Prosecutors want to increase his bail from $1 million to $5 million. And fake money, like the kind used on movie sets, is flooding stores this holiday season. The Secret Service is warning people that the fake money looks very close to real money. The naval base in Pensacola, Florida, has come under attack today after a shooter opened fire in a classroom building this morning. The shooting left 4 people dead, including the assailant, and many wounded. The suspected shooter is a Saudi national who was in aviation training at the base.
The base was immediately put under lockdown and is still closed for oncoming traffic. According to Escambia County Sheriff David Morgan, the attacker used a handgun to shoot 11 people. That includes 2 first responder sheriff's deputies, one of whom killed the shooter.
We have 2 officers at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office in the initial response that negated the threat that are now in a local hospital. We expect them to fully recover.
President Trump expressed his condolences on Twitter and later at a roundtable meeting. He also said that King Salman of Saudi Arabia called him to express sympathies.
The king said that the Saudi people are greatly angered by the barbaric actions of the shooter, and that this person in no way, shape, or form represents the feelings of the Saudi people who love the American people so much.
The station confirmed on Twitter that the victims' names will be released in 24 hours.
Walking through the crime scene was like being on the set of a movie. And as the mayor eloquently put, you just don't expect this to happen at home.
According to a spokesperson, the FBI has now taken over the investigation. The Bureau is now working with the Saudi Arabian government to obtain background information on the shooter. One of the Navy's most historic bases, NAS Pensacola, employs over 16,000 military and 7,400 civilian personnel. It is home to the Blue Angels flight demonstration team and the National Naval Aviation Museum. The shooting is the second at a U.S. naval base this week, following an attack at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii on Wednesday.
And law enforcement officials have identified the suspect as Mohammed al-Samrani. An all clear was given at Patrick Air Force Base in Brevard County, Florida today, an hour after a bomb threat forced authorities to evacuate the area. The base said on Twitter around 3:30 p.m. that security forces, explosive ordnance disposal, and the fire department were on the scene investigating. It later said that there was no credible threat to the area at this time. Normal operations at the base have resumed. And as the Trump administration celebrated a better-than-expected jobs report today, President Trump met with leaders of small businesses to talk about his deregulation push. The White House estimates that deregulation has cut down on over $50 billion in regulatory costs.
Shortly after Trump took office, he signed an executive order directing federal agencies to cut 2 regulations for every new one created. Almost 3 years later, the White House says they've cut 7.5 for every new one created.
So this is a tremendous lifting of the burden on people's backs, small businesses in particular.
They also discussed the administration's regulatory autumn agenda. The agenda lays out the process for implementing new regulations, including identifying those that are likely to come up in the next year. It emphasizes transparency of the regulatory process and public feedback before the regulations go into effect. The deregulatory actions proposed are aimed at streamlining infrastructure building, promoting new technology, and providing relief to small businesses. Holly Kellum, NTD News.
Good news for U.S. workers. Unemployment last month touched a 50-year low, and the national economy added 266,000 jobs. The Dow Jones Industrial Average soared 1.2% in today's stock market. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq also rose 1%.
U.S. job growth increased by the most in 10 months in November, a strong sign that the economy is not in danger of stalling. Those gains include about 50,000 General Motors employees who returned to work after a 6-week-long strike. And the healthcare industry added 45,000 jobs and an additional 45,000 jobs in leisure and hospitality. The unemployment rate fell slightly from 3.6 in October back to 3.5% in November. This reached a 50-year low. It suggests consumers will continue to drive the longest economic expansion in history, now in its 11th year. Workers also boosted their incomes with an average raise of 3.1% over the past year. The strong payroll gains suggest the Trump administration's 17-month trade war with China has not yet spilled over from the U.S. manufacturing industry to the broader economy. The improving data validate the Federal Reserve's decision in October to cut interest rates for the third time this year.
A White House economic advisor says the U.S.-China trade talks are happening around the clock. He added that Washington and Beijing are close to an agreement, but said they're not quite there yet.
Hi, everybody.
Speaking to reporters outside the White House, economic advisor Larry Kudlow said that President Trump considers the talks constructive, but stated that there is no deadline for a deal.
I don't want to make any forecasts about any dates. There's no arbitrary deadlines, never has been.
Amid the negotiations, China announced on Friday that it is waiving punitive tariffs on U.S. soybeans and pork.
Should we take that as an encouraging signal from
Beijing? I call it good mood music. I appreciate it very much.
President Trump rattled investors last week by saying he wouldn't mind waiting until after the 2020 elections for an agreement. New tariffs on Chinese goods like laptops and cell phones are set to become effective on December 15th. But Wall Street has been hoping progress on a trade deal might stave them off.
December 15th, something could happen, but we are not discussing that yet.
China has been seeking relief from some tariffs as part of the negotiations.
The White House today urged House Democrats to drop the impeachment inquiry, signaling it may decline to participate in an upcoming hearing. White House counsel Pat Cipollone said in a letter to the House Judiciary Committee chairman that it should end the inquiry now. He called it a waste of America's time and added that adopting articles of impeachment now would be an unconstitutional abuse of power by the Democratic House majority. He also criticized the proceedings for violating basic due process and for lacking a single shred of evidence. Today was the deadline for President Trump to respond to the chairman's request for participation in a December 9th Judiciary Committee hearing. Given the tone of the letter, it seems unlikely that the White House will participate. And oil prices rose sharply today, and they're likely to keep going up. The rise takes place as some of the world's major oil exporting nations agree to cut oil output by 500,000 barrels per day early next year.
Oil prices rose and are likely to continue the upward trend. The rise accompanied an agreement by the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, and its allies. The members agreed to cut oil output for a few months next year. We have analyzed in-depth scenarios and options and have come to a conclusion that in order to balance the market, 500,000 barrels per day of additional cuts would be needed. The additional cuts will take place in January, February, and March as a means to limit the oil supply and increase oil prices, aimed at increasing the revenue for OPEC member countries. The cuts represent about 1.7% of global output. The cuts go on top of OPEC's previously agreed cuts of 1.2 million barrels per day.
I think there is a state of readiness among us to continue that collaboration and to continue observing what happens to the market.
Any price gains from the cuts will likely benefit American oil producers, since the U.S. is not an OPEC member and so does not have to cut its oil production. American drillers have been breaking production records even as they cut the number of oil rigs in operation, filling gaps in global supply.
And Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein is in court this morning for a bail hearing.
New York prosecutors asked the judge to increase Harvey Weinstein's bail from $1 million to $5 million because he failed to wear a required tracking device on numerous occasions. Weinstein is a famous Hollywood producer charged with 5 sex crimes. His defense attorney said he had never tried to flee, arguing it's a technical problem.
It was a fairly short period of time, and really what they are technical violations. There was never a period of time that anyone could not get in contact with Mr. Weinstein.
Weinstein limped into Manhattan Supreme Court this morning with the help of 2 men. His attorney said the court case is tough on him.
And this has been hard on him. He has some back issues that we're hoping to address this week, and that's where his health stands, you can tell.
Weinstein had to appear in court to be informed of a change to New York's criminal justice system set to go into effect in January that will eliminate bail for nonviolent felonies. The judge didn't make a decision on the bail and scheduled a hearing next Wednesday. Weinstein's trial is set for January 6, 2020. He could face a life sentence if convicted.
It's a concept as old as Rome, but some U.S. states are reforming their cash bail systems, either getting rid of them entirely or cutting down their usage. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more from New York, a state undergoing a criminal justice overhaul.
With cash bail, money decides whether defendants await trial in jail or outside. New York, however, is eliminating cash bail for certain misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies starting January. Julie Rendelman, a criminal defense lawyer, said the reform is meant to help defendants avoid an unfair pretrial system.
First of all, keep in mind the word is accused, so that they have not been convicted of a crime, and yet they're being held sometimes with low bail, which they can't afford, or high bail, which they can't afford. And
New Jersey eliminated cash bail in 2017. So far, officials say it's working. State data for 2017 shows a 1% increase in new indictable crimes among those released without money bail compared to 2014, and a 3% decrease in court appearance rate. The state did not see spikes in crime or no-shows in court. But unlike Jersey, New York will also stop judges from basing their release decisions on whether a person is a danger to the public.
Think of a robbery. We're going to have situations where individuals, and we have the data to back it up, go out and do repeated robberies, court released, court released.
Shea said the reform would be a win for everyone, such as defendants and public safety, if this issue were tweaked. Rendelman said the reform was necessary.
Did they do it perfectly? I'm not so sure. I think time will tell whether they did it perfectly. I think we all, whether you're a defense attorney or a prosecutor, have some questions about some of the decisions that were made.
Defendants charged with violent felonies, however, may still get cash bail. If they do, judges are required to consider their financial situations. Also part of next year's reform, defendants and prosecutors will have quicker access to evidence, and law enforcement agencies are saying they'll need more money to meet this requirement. But last month, Governor Cuomo said he will not provide funding. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
Up next, fake money, like the kind used in movies, is flooding stores during the holiday season. The Secret Service with tips for detecting the counterfeit notes. More on that when we return.
Every once in a while, something comes along so masterful, it leaves you in awe. So inspiring, it changes your life. So beautiful, you wish it would never end. When that happens, it's something not to be missed. Shen Yun, an all-new production every year.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
Our investigative reporters at the Epoch Times have spent 18 months uncovering the biggest political scandal in modern history. We connected the dots around Spygate, the actions by Obama-era officials against Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Join me on Declassified as we bring you up-to-date developments on this unfolding scandal.
This shopping season, a new kind of fake currency is on the rise. NTD's Catherine Wen explains why you should look closely at the money you receive and how to recognize fake notes.
At a press conference today, Senator Chuck Schumer warning that counterfeit movie money used in Hollywood films is flooding stores this holiday season.
There's a 25% surge in movie money being passed off as the real thing, according to the Secret Service, which is the federal agency in charge of preventing counterfeiting.
These bills are made as movie props, but are also sold through online retailers like Amazon or eBay. People buy them as gag gifts or for practice, but it's also making it easier to traffic fake money.
The real counterfeiting is painstaking. It costs a lot of money and you have to be very skilled. To get money like this, all you got to do is go online. Now, counterfeiters go online, buy reams of this stuff, and then use it at stores.
The Secret Service is urging shoppers and retailers to take a second to look at their notes. Look for motion picture only, replica, or any foreign writing.
These are all Hollywood counterfeit money. Here's a real one. Very hard to tell the difference between the two.
But Schumer wants proactive efforts to curb the circulation of these kinds of notes. He is calling on the Internet Association, a trade association that represents online retailers, to take action.
Internet Association should work with the Secret Service and stop people from selling.
According to a Secret Service warning, of the over $100 million in counterfeit money that passed in 2018, 12% was fake movie money or notes with foreign characters on them. Reporting by Catherine Wen, NTD News, New York.
Hundreds of demonstrators rallied near Hong Kong City Hall today, demanding police stop using tear gas in residential areas. They say it's excessive and harms innocent bystanders.
More than 10,000 rounds of tear gas have been fired by Hong Kong police since June. Rally participants expressed fear of possible health risks from the noxious clouds of gas.
I think part of the reason why we are having this assembly is to raise awareness among the public about the effects of the tear gas.
To urge the government to actually publish and investigate the main ingredients of the tear gas.
Speakers at the event included medical professionals and university researchers. They shared their concerns about the health impacts of crowd-control mechanisms. One speaker accused police of firing tear gas into densely populated neighborhoods and enclosed areas and turning their homeland into a citywide gas chamber.
But the most important things we're trying here is to urge the governments to disclose the component of tear gas and implement measures of remedy methods.
Protesters are demanding an investigation into police use of force, including tear gas. A pro-democracy march is set for Sunday. Organizers expect a large turnout, intended to show the movement still has strong momentum. Police said they will intervene immediately if Sunday's march turns violent.
Up next, forget farmers markets. Shoppers at some stores now have the option of buying fresh produce grown right inside the store. That and more after the break.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Berlin-based urban farming startup InFarm is partnering with supermarket chain Kroger.
InFarm technology involves growing plants indoors in trays using hydroponics. It's a way of growing plants without soil in a climate and LED lighting controlled glass case. As of November 25th, 2 stores feature its modules in Washington state, with another 13 planned. Plants grown include lettuce, watercress, and a variety of herbs.
That tastes fantastic. Tastes like what came just out of the garden, doesn't it, Ollie? It's very good.
Pretty amazing. It's a totally new idea to me. I love it. I definitely like to eat local. If not from my own garden, I like to look for things that are grown nearby.
The growing units can be put in stores or dining rooms. They can also be chained together in central distribution centers, each with its own microclimate. Leila Restaurant in Berlin has the growing units to grow plants in its restaurant.
They are telling me and asking, are you sure this is what we're going to get in our dishes? And then we are showing it to them in their dishes, and they're really, really loving the fact that they sit just next to them and it's here.
Founded in 2013 by 3 Israeli entrepreneurs, InFarm now has more than 500 of its farming units worldwide.
Now to France, where massive strikes are affecting tourism, leaving shop owners wary of holiday sale shortfalls.
Nationwide strikes have erupted in France as protesters take to the streets, angry over retirement pension reforms. President Emmanuel Macron wants to overhaul the current pensions, one of the most generous in the world, in an attempt to simplify it.
They're very worried about their future, and some shops have closed because of this tragic situation.
Though some shop owners say they understand the protesters' grievances, they are worried that a longer strike and more protests would eventually take a bigger hit on their December revenues.
If the strike goes on, clients will not come because there is no train, no subway.
France's public transport networks ground to a near halt on Thursday as more than 800,000 workers protested across the nation, with clashes, fires, and tear gas in Paris and Nantes. Shut in Paris and 2 commuter lines, the RER ran limited services.
It is a total shutdown. What's the time now? 3 p.m.? I've hardly seen anyone.
He says during the Yellow Vest protests last year, his sales suffered 10%. He's afraid of a repeat this year. But bigger stores in the retail sector said they could ride out the disruption. A spokesperson at high-end department store chain Galeries Lafayette said everything was normal. Transport unions have set no end date for the strike.
Up next, how sweet is this? A model city made from gingerbread and other candy items has arrived in London. More on that when we return.
Our investigative reporters at the Epoch Times have spent 18 months uncovering the biggest political scandal in modern history. We connected the dots around Spygate, the actions by Obama-era officials against Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Join me on Declassified as we bring you up-to-date developments on this unfolding scandal.
Architects in London traded concrete and wood for biscuits and dough to create the Gingerbread City, a futuristic city made of edible treats unveiled yesterday. The Gingerbread City has buildings, bridges, train stations, and other structures made by more than 100 architects, designers, and engineers from different companies. Now in its 4th year, this edition's theme is transport. Jelly beans, candy canes, boiled sweets, and plenty of other confectionery favorites have been used for decoration.
There's always someone who wants to try to take a bite. There's always someone, you see the little pieces from the edges go, and those are probably the children, but then sometimes you see people leaning over and you just hope that they just do not stick out their tongue and lick something.
Some of the well-known structures include London Bridge Station, Battersea Power Station, and Tate Modern, as well as a moving train. There's even a beach made from brown sugar.
But it's actually not very tasty because it's so strong. It's actually not that great to eat.
I've eaten a lot of gingerbread along the way, so I think I'm probably done for this year.
The exhibition opens to the public on Saturday and runs until January 5th, 2020.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer.